Welcome to Fleet Auto News Podcast. I'm Caroline Falls, and today I'm speaking with Balz Eggengerger, co-founder of Swiss-based Fleetcompetence Group, a fleet management business operating throughout Europe and in the US. It's a great chance for us to catch up on developments in fleet in Europe. It's important for our Australian and New Zealand audiences to know what's going on in Europe, because so many of our laws and regulations in the automotive field end up following Europe's lead. Think ANCAP, the Australian Automotive Safety Protocols. This is because Europe has the most stringent standards in the world, particularly when it comes to vehicle emissions. Let's get going. Welcome, Balz.
Welcome, Caroline. Thank you very much to offer me the chance to talk to you today.
Now, firstly, let's talk about where you are exactly and what time it is. I'm in Sydney, where it's presently 6 p.m. and very cold by our standards, not yours in Switzerland, but it's early morning for you there, right?
Yeah, it's not so early anymore. It's 10 o'clock in the morning and The weather is nice. Sun is shining. It was raining the last few days, but now our summer is coming. We just are in early summer and we are waiting for a hot, beautiful summertime.
And where are you? You're in Zurich, right?
We are based next to the Lake of Constance in the eastern part of Switzerland, about 1 hour from Zurich and about 2 miles from the Austrian frontier.
Oh, glorious. I talked a little bit about Fleetcompetence, your group, in the intro, but can you tell us a bit more, like when Fleetcompetence was founded, how many markets you might be operating in, and what you see as your mission?
Fleetcompetence was founded exactly 10 years ago. So we have our 10th anniversary this year. And we started in the beginning in Switzerland, Germany, and then following customer needs, we now are active in most European markets and in the US. We work together with a partner network, and what we really offer to companies is a single point of contact. When they come to us, we offer them with our partners in all countries the same methodics for fleet problems like car policy alignment or tenders and things like this. And they just have one point of contact, and we can help them with in the same way in France, in Germany, in Austria, in Switzerland. And this is something which didn't exist before, and I think this is also what is this advantage of our Fleetcompetence Group and our partner network with about 55 partners worldwide.
Okay, so it's good to know that background because it helps establish your authority to talk about sort of all things fleet throughout Europe. Now, I met you virtually in Switzerland in early 2020 when I was there and headed to the Geneva Motor Show and a conference that you had organised, but it all got cancelled at the last minute because of COVID. That was so disappointing. And we've since become masters at managing disappointment, to say the least. But let's catch up and have you tell us about how tumultuous the intervening period has been for your group, the industry in Europe, and some of the disruptions that you witnessed.
Yeah, I mean, the time was really tough. It started when we couldn't organize our international fleet event in Geneva in 2020. Everything was ready, everything was down already, and 4 days before this big event, everything was stopped. So we were shocked. We had a lot of costs. We didn't like it because for our group, this is one of the most important events at this international motor show. We meet our customers from all countries. We meet leasing companies and all these guys. And the personal contact was very important for our group until then. So as everybody, we had to get organized in a different way. And in the last few years, we learned how to organize much more virtually. And I must say, after all, it was not a bad experience. We learned a lot. And our business didn't go down. We could maintain on the same level. We are much more productive today. We really make a difference if you have a virtual meeting or a real meeting. We learned that with virtual meeting, a lot of things are possible and there's no need to travel around all the time for each meeting. So I think after all, we didn't like to start this experience, but after all, it was still a good experience and we learned a lot. And I think it made our group stronger after all.
Sounds like it's been a good experiment and learning curve for sustainability. Less travel.
And when you, maybe for the second question in your first question, what did this mean in Europe? I mean, if you look at our customers, many of them learned to work with the employees at home. Home office has grown a lot. And we just conducted a market study to find out what this means now. What is, after all, will they stay with home office or not? Will they all go back to the office? And it was really very interesting to learn that in Switzerland, for example, about 25% of all the companies we asked and gave us an answer said home office will be a part of the future way how we work with our people. So, and also we asked also some question about the mobility. One question is, what do you think? Will you be more mobile in the future or not? Will you search for different mobile ways to be mobile? And it was also very interesting what we got as an answer. So most of the companies think that home office will be a part of the future work, and they are also looking at new forms of mobility. This all has to do with this COVID and with the different ways we had to organize our work. So they talk about car sharing, they talk about mobility budgets, about new forms of mobility. There's a lot of new ideas coming up, and many of the companies also are just working on their car places to change some rules for the employees. Electro mobility is a big topic. So there's a lot of change in this market at the moment.
Oh, great. So COVID, the catalyst for change. A lot of things that you've just touched on. I do have some questions sort of along those lines later. But just talking about the Geneva Motor Show and the conference that you organised, did it go ahead this year? It did, didn't it? And how was it? What were some of the highlights? And what was it like to be with people again?
There was no show this year either. There was a very small event, but just for some journalists, I think, a very, very small thing where they promoted the car of the year and things like this. But it was a closed event. It was not open to public. So the Geneva Motor Show, as we know it, didn't happen again. They talk about to reorganize it next year, but no more on the same level, because in the earlier years, it was always about 10 days, and 2 of these days were for press days. They talk about a week next year, no more in March, but in February. And we are not quite sure if this will work, if people will come, if they will ever be on the same level as they used to be before. Because I think so many things changed, and also the OEMs learned to sell their cars differently. I'm not sure if they are willing again to spend all this money for these big public shows. We saw it, for example, last year. There was a big show in Munich, the IAA, which used to be in Frankfurt before, was for the first time in Munich, but it was a different show. It was no more a car show. It was a kind of a mobility show. So between all the cars, you had almost more bicycles and new mobility ideas. The event took place in Munich, not only in an event place. There were several spots in Munich where this event happened. So it was very special, and not all people liked it. Some thought it was a great idea. It will be the future, but the opinions were at least divided. So it will be very interesting to see what will happen with this famous big motor shows, there may be a lot of change as well in the future, I think.
Oh gosh, okay. Sounds a little bit sad, actually. Okay, let's talk electric vehicles now. I don't know if you know Australia is considered a real laggard in the adoption of EVs, in part thanks to very slack government policies that don't incentivise the market like those of Europe. Things are turning around quickly now, though, as we have a new government that is looking serious about climate change policies, including things to promote more sustainable transport models. But for now, we also have a problem here in getting supply of the most up-to-date vehicle models, and often attribute that to stricter European policies that have car makers prioritising Europe over the down under market to sell their new vehicles. So can you tell us about European policies that are in now and that are coming that foster adoption of EVs?
Okay, this is one of my favorite topics at the moment, the EV mobility, because as you know, as in most countries, nobody talked about electric vehicles seriously about 5 years ago. And things changed a lot. I just got a paper from Fleet Europe in my hands yesterday, and there it's written that now in 2030, we think about true fleet EV sales in European fleets will be 30%. 30%. That's a lot. And when we talk about Europe, Europe is not one country. We have a lot of different countries and we have a lot of special rules. And depending on the rules, the EV sales are very different. I can give you some examples. For example, in Norway, the EV of total fleet, the true sales are 83%. 83%. Can you believe this? 83%.
Excellent.
But Norway was the country in Europe that started very early and they fully pushed the EV. Then on the other side, the last one is Poland. In Poland, we have 2%. So we have between 2% and 83% everything. Some other major markets like Sweden, we are at about 55%, Netherlands 37%, Germany 31%, Belgium 30%, UK 27%, Switzerland about 22%. These are, by the way, the 2021 numbers. France 20%, Italy 18%. Why is this so different? When we look at the map, then we see that the Nordics, you have a lot of support. Then there are some other countries where you have at least some support. United Kingdom, France, Germany, Switzerland. And then you have some countries where there's almost no support. Poland, Italy, Spain, Ireland. And so the EV topic in Europe is quite different. So this is where we are now. But talking about what we feel when we have our consulting projects, we see that a lot of especially international companies, they really have to go for EVs because most of them have zero emission targets. And how will you ever go in the direction of zero emission without pushing EV? So very often now the general management gives the targets for companies, and I'm personally in 2 big projects at the moment where we just have all the discussion. And the funny thing is, normally when we have fleet projects, you have to do with purchasing, fleet managers, and maybe HR. But this time, when we talk about EV, in both big projects, the CEOs are involved in these projects. It seems to be a big change, an important change for companies. So the tension we have in Europe for this EV topic is very big. So they all would like to, but the interesting part is, can they bring the vehicles on the streets? No, they can't. Why? Because we have some problems with the delivery. Just to give an example, if you order a Skoda Enyaq, which is one of the most wanted fleet cars in Europe, you have, when you order it now, you will get it in 18 months. 18. It's not a joke. And there are some others which you can have earlier. Tesla at the moment is quite good because you have the new factory next to Berlin. You can have a Tesla Y within about 5 months, a Tesla 3 with about 6 months. So for Tesla, it's okay. And something else which is funny, some new brands which were not typically fleet brands now have a big chance, like Hyundai, Kia, for example, as they have perfect cars. Kia, which was selected like a car of the year at the Geneva Motor Show with the new EV. So these cars have a big chance because their delivery is easier than the one of the famous Volkswagens, for example, or Skodas and others, where they have just these delivery problems. This may be a temporary problem, but at the moment it's a big problem, and it pushes some customers to choose or to change their car policy, especially the ones that decide they want to do something now and not wait 2 years until they can bring the first car on the street. So it's a very, very interesting, but also a very complicated topic. And the interesting question is, how or when will this change? When will we get normal delivery solution? We don't know. It's also depending a little bit on the war in the Ukraine, where, for example, Volkswagen had a big problem because some parts were manufactured there. But I just learned last week that they were very intelligent, so they took out the crews that produced these missing parts. They brought them all to, I think, Czechoslovakia, and there now they build it as kind of a plant in tents and can at least now produce some of the parts. So we hope that situation will get better in the coming months, but personally I think this year it will be tough if we want to get an electric car soon on the street.
We'll be back after a short break for a word from our sponsor, Sofico Services.
Sofico is a world-leading provider of enterprise software for the automotive leasing, finance, and mobility industry. For more than 30 years, international leasing companies and OEMs count on Sofico's expertise and technology to help them transform innovative product concepts into streamlined business processes and engaging customer experiences. With more than 370 experts, 8 offices on 4 continents, and an annual growth averaging 15%, Sofico is perfectly positioned to help its customers succeed in a rapidly changing market where electrification, shared fleets, and multimodal mobility challenge us and our customers to play a pioneering role. Continuous investment in people, innovation, and leading-edge technology is the basis for continued growth and success.
Amazing. Just amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's all so volatile and dynamic, so everyone has to be very quick thinking and act fast. We sort of talked about it a little bit earlier, but yeah, I'd just love to get you to talk a little bit more about these shared mobility trends in Europe. When we talked back in the early days of COVID, there was a rush on hire cars and an avoidance of public transport. And I was wondering if that penchant of drivers to have their own vehicle amid the pandemic also upset the trends to mobility as a service or MaaS, and, you know, what the long-term implications of that were. But you touched earlier on saying that everybody's thinking is sort of like changing and that they're looking at all of these different things. So, yeah, tell me a bit more about what's going on there.
Yes, this is a very interesting topic indeed. And as you know, I probably told you, we founded a new company 2 years ago exactly for this topic, the first mobility group. And there we tried to touch these new topics like mobility budget, as you said, where the idea is not to offer a car or a train ticket to the employees, but a choice that is defined by the employer. So he says, for example, you have a budget, $1,000, and per month, and you can choose. And we, as a company, we decide what you can choose. Why is this important? If you want to reduce CO2, then it's better when you give the choice, when you have an influence on all the options the employer has. If you just give him a budget of $1,000 and he does what he wants, like a cash allowance, then you have absolutely no influence on how he spends his money. And this is completely different with the mobility budgets and these new systems where you say, for example, okay, you can choose a car Apo. Many of the OEMs now offer also these Apo solutions where you have some shorter terms. You can, for example, choose a Audi A3 for 6 months, and then you think about something else in for another 6 months or whatever. Or you can choose traditional leasing, or you can choose a train ticket, or maybe you can choose Uber coupons, or you can also choose home office kit. This is also part of the mobility budget, especially if you're allowed to work 2 days at home. Then this means also that somebody should pay for some infrastructure at home. This can also be part of the mobility budget. Then another big topic is, especially with EVs, the whole electricity part, the wall box, things like this can be part of this mobility budget. And not to forget, it's maybe not the same problem in Australia, but here in Europe we have this problem, parking spots. Parking spots are very limited, and one part of such a mobility budget can also be a parking spot at the company with or without wall box. If you want this, then you pay for it. It will reduce your budget. This is all the idea about this mobility budget. And there's a lot of talk about this topic for years now, 3 or 4 years. The thing is, if then you want to order it, then it gets much more difficult. And why? Because it's a completely change of what happened before, and it's also much more complicated. We just had such a discussion with a international company. First, there were workshops for a few months with the procurement and the fleet manager. They all found it a very good concept, and then suddenly at the final meeting, there was somebody else from the top management. They said, "Yeah, but it sounds complicated. Why don't we just give these guys a cash allowance? It's so much easier for us." And this is exactly what is happening now. The good ideas need much more energy to develop them and also to offer them to the employees. Cash allowance or just a car is an easy one, but you will not get at the lower CO2 emission. And it goes even further, especially here in Europe. We have some countries, Spain, for example, when you have a plant and you have a certain number of employees, I'm no more sure, but I think something like more than 500, then you have to show a concept how you will influence all the commuting, not just the company cars, but everybody coming to work, how you intend to make this as CO neutral as possible. And these mobility budget things would help not just to give it to people that now have company cars, but to influence all the mobility of all employees from a company. So there's a lot of discussion, but it's still we are not there where we have 10 different solutions. A lot of things are just in a late developing state, but it's not. It's not. We need some more time. It's not finished yet, and the company will be developed with some. These concepts will be developed with some companies that want to go this way, and we will need some first movers who really want to do this, and then the wall will break and all the others will be there. And we are just now, many of them are pushing, but the wall is still standing, and I think it takes maybe another year or maybe 2, but then we are there. So it's a really interesting thing, and we are fully in this topic as well with the second company because we didn't want to mix it. We also did it with some other partners which have this special IT knowledge, because you need a lot of IT knowledge to do this. And so we are also one of the movers in this field.
So obviously we need a lot of commitment, and it's a real watch this space area, and I'll be watching that space. So have to talk to you again in another year or so. Now, I'd like to finish up with a completely open-ended question where you maybe want to tell me about something that my questions didn't enable, you to talk about. For example, you might want to tell us about, which I think you've actually touched on quite a bit, the European mood for tackling climate change, and what companies are doing there. Or you might want to talk about data. You already just said in your last comment that there's so much data, and how companies need that data to improve or reduce their carbon footprint. Anyway, over to you, Balz, for the final words.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Maybe there's one topic we didn't really touch. We talked now about the fleet. We talked about the EV thing. We didn't talk about the OEMs. And there are also some differences, because for this interview, I made a search yesterday. I want to find out if there are some differences between the targets OEMs have in Europe compared to other countries. And indeed, there are. So I can just give you some information there.
Fantastic.
For example, BMW wants to be carbon neutral by 2050. They don't make a difference between Europe and other countries. But for example, they will offer the mini brand electric only by 2030. And Ford, for example, say that all European Ford will be electric in 2030. And you see, we talk about the European Fords, not all the Fords in the world. Volvo, they say they will also be all electric in 2030. Volvo now meaning Geely. Geely is the major brand. Then GM will be 100% pure electric sales by 2035, and they will be carbon neutral in 2040. But there are some others, for example, I'm just looking for the one. You see, Stellantis, for example. Stellantis is the brand now. Opel is one of their brands, and some others. They, for example, say 2030, 100% battery electric vehicle sales in Europe and 50% in the US. So you see, they make another difference. We have 100% in Europe by 2030, but only 50% in the US. Then Toyota, also very special. Toyota will be all electric in Europe by 2035, but carbon neutral in 2050. Audi will launch all the brands as battery electric vehicles from 2026 on. And the production of ECE ends in 2033. That's the only brand where I could see a clear finish date, where they say 2033 we will produce no more ECE, which is a clear statement, I think. And the Audi brand will also be neutral. Volkswagen, sorry, not Audi, will be carbon neutral in 2050. So what we can say, Europe will reach an all-electric sales share of 30% for passenger cars, vans and trucks by the end of 2030. That is at least written in this article. So I like this article. I think the numbers sound really realistic to me.
Sounds amazing. I'd like to get a copy of that article. Can you email it to me?
Yes, I will.
All right. Just to sign off with you, I love to travel and meet up with people from all over the world. And it's been lovely to join you today virtually and catch up on what's happening in the fleet world in Europe. Thanks for your time, Balz.
Thank you very much, Caroline. It was a pleasure one more time. I will always give you information if there's a need, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you a lot.
You've been listening to Fleet Auto News podcast. It was edited and produced by Isabella Fiorentino. Thank you again to our new sponsor, Sofico Services. It's great to have you on board. The original theme music for this podcast was created by Isabella Fiorentino. You can follow us on Spotify. Just search for Fleet Auto News. We're also on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. Our website is fleetautonews.com, where you can get all our stories, videos and podcasts. Until next time, drive safely and take